When you start to study primary health system, or you go into that training, and you are given the tools to help people wake up to their body consciousness, their form principle, because it's designed to dominate, as in it's designed to be alive and vital. It is the whole nature of what it is to be embodied or embodiment. And then the passenger witness consciousness, the psychology of the nature of how we see and what we think we are, or what our motivational frequency is. That is part of the movie. I'm not dogging on your personality. Being a personality is wonderful. I love it. As in, it's fun. It's fun to witness. You don't have to negate or self-hate anything about what it is to be alive. It's just putting the consciousness of the witness passenger in its proper place, as in, allow the vehicle, the body, to be the life. See the body as the solution, not the problem. Okay? It has its one precious life, and it chose you. It chose you. Okay. So now we have a close-up looking at the design crystal, where we have the biological correspondence of the posterior and anterior pituitary gland. So as these glands are sitting in the ajna center itself, as in this is the vortice of awareness, this hub of, you could call it energy, even though it's not an energy center. Let's call it awareness. Yes, we know it's awareness. It's mental awareness that operates over all time. It goes into the past to process and make sense of. It goes into the future to try and recognize patterns, project into the future. And it also goes into the here and now, which truly is what we all have access to, this now that affects the influence of how our past hits us or is perceived by us, as well as the now informing the future. This is the here and now, the now space of your awareness place. Okay, so then we see this is one of the most profound biological associations that we have. These are considered to be master glands, as in master because everything within this body graph structure, everything, all of these centers, all have a spokesperson inside of your ajna. This is why you think, therefore you think, you are sad. As in, you're aware of sadness. The body's chemistry is maybe emoting sadness, but it is not truly what you are. It's a biological chemistry that sets up a kind of psychology. And these are the things to be aware of, that you are observing that. You are not that. Just like we are not parts and pieces. I am not simply my kidneys. There are so much more to the I am principle. What this has in store for you to understand is that these glands are basically, again, the pituitary, anterior and posterior master glands of our vehicle, both internally and externally. It's one of the byproducts of the filtering of our design crystal sitting there in the ajna, and that information that the design crystal needs to transmit to the biological correspondences, in other words, to the body organs and organ systems, for us to have a relational dynamic between what we think of as I, this body, this vehicle, this life. So the body, the ajna, as the housing of the design crystal, here we have our place sitting in the cockpit, our as in the body's place, where it runs the vehicle, not the personality. As an example, can you will yourself to die? Can you just stop breathing and then you die? No, your body picks up and says, nope, don't want to die, not my time, I'm going to breathe. You know, so just kind of making it silly like that, goofy. And if you have any resistance against this, just observe it, you know, observing, experimenting, processing with awareness. Sometimes things shift quite suddenly, quite dramatically. Mutation takes hold in a flash. Now, in order for the design crystal to be able to leave this ajna center, it has to be pulled on by that magnetic monopole. That's what's going to create this drop into death. So it's not like the ajna is motorized. We don't have that, right? There's no design crystal motorization. There's no motor, in other words, connected up to our mind's process. Everything about our body is conditioned, this vehicle has to do with the relationship to the magnetic monopole. It is, in fact, the driver. You are not. You are passenger, witness, consciousness, awareness. Okay, so what we're looking at is when that drops down into the throat. So you can see that little thing happening here, this channel 4320. We call structuring. It has a very unusual capacity. We know it to be about efficiency. Oh, let's have an efficient death. The design crystal brings the process in a human being in the throat to the expression of its form principle, its nature. Okay? So in a design crystal beginning its process in a human being in the throat, in the early stages of conception, the design crystal, its earliest home, is actually in the throat center, in order that it can be in charge of the creation, the manifestation of our vehicle itself. And this unusual, unique, wacky, weird, isn't it so? We're all individual. This unusual capacity where we have the first track of that design crystal actually making its way to the ajna is what in essence opens up the vehicle, or the design crystal. It has to build the body in order for it to have all of these wonderful organ systems, builds the body, and then the design crystal travels up from the throat into the ajna. And then ultimately at the end, when there is death, this gives the design crystal the ability to leave the ajna and go back to the throat. And then from the throat down to the monopole. So that is the process, this traveling. So in the moment of death, that monopole is pulling on the design crystal. And it pulls the design crystal into the throat, back to where the body was built. And what has happened at the biological level is that the moment this design crystal actually gets pulled, okay, pulled out of the ajna, that's when the pituitary system, remember these were the master glands, those pituitary systems shut down. And that shuts down our brain information, the information necessary to run the body, the vehicular systems. Remember that the pituitaries, as far as what its job description is, it's the master glands, right? So here they are. Master glands informing all of the different organ centers, the organ functions. And when that design crystal is not in the pituitary area of the body graph, it's down here. There we go. It's down here where we have the thyroid system. So the vehicle no longer can run. The vehicle falls apart. So there will not be, in the moment of death, enough significant activity in any level to be able to indicate that life is still there. When that design crystal leaves the ajna, the moment of death on the surface is like just this really like quick, okay, right? Moment of death, okay? Moment of death. We could call it brain death. It's evident on the surface, but it's still not complete. Now think about this, it's very fast movement. It's not like moments or minutes, it's a flash. But it's still, this is the moment of death in that moment. So human beings, usually we're going to pay attention to death through the heart, right? You see those movies, the flatline happens, and it's the end. It's something interesting to note that the death of the heart, or the stopping of the heart muscle, is something that actually takes place simultaneously at the same time that you have the design crystal actually leaving the ajna, leaving the ajna center, moving down through structuring, boom, heart death, brain death, heart stop, brain death. Because why? Oh, because the heart stopped and we had brain death. No, because the design crystal left. Nobody's home in the pituitary places and spaces. So this is the movement from the ajna to the throat downward that the design crystal, if you're trying to measure that movement, it's actually happening at an incredible speed, very, very fast. So you wouldn't see it like a staged process at all. It would be more like an expulsion more than it is being pulled. It's just like, boom, out, gone, done. Now, the next place in our journey we're talking about is the 1-8. It's a very interesting channel. I love it. It's great. No, I have it. So when you think about this channel, this is the need not only to be able to contribute and to express yourself, to be inspired, but it is the main channel of expression for a group of 3 to 5 people. The small group, we know it as penta dynamics. So what we're looking at, this unusual capacity for creative self-expression, the creative, the one on one side. And we're looking at, if we open this up as a track, now self-expression ends. Isn't that interesting? How nice. Of course self-expression would end. There's brain death, Lavina, heart stoppage, and yes, but it has to end in order for that channel to open up, for the design crystal to move down into the G, the higher self. And when that monopole pulls the design crystal into the throat, what actually happens at the moment is this moment when it moves into the throat, everybody's throat center has rather unusual design crystals in it at the cellular level. To remind everyone, these are simply the primary crystals of consciousness. Every cell has a crystal. Okay, now there's some unusual design crystals at the cellular level in everybody's throat center. And these cellular design crystals are the agents of what open up this gateway of the 8 into the first gate. So basically what happens at the moment of death, all of this is very quick, it's not a long process. The moon clicks into place and all of these things are ready, set, and go. Ready, set, go. Oh, there we have the true death, where the design crystal comes down into the G center. So that design crystal reuniting or bonding again with the magnetic monopole, when they bond, now you get the true death. So very quick between what we would consider as a human species, yeah, heart stopped, brain dead, versus the true mechanical terms in human design, true death, the reuniting of the design crystal, the vehicle, the body consciousness, and the monopole, the driver. So if you can imagine these two together in the moment of death, there's now the personality crystal still hanging out up there outside of the physical body, literally. It doesn't get a ride as the body shuts down. It's sitting there. The vehicle itself is shutting down. So, or has shut down in this moment of true death. So you can get a kind of notion of what the real relationship is between your personality consciousness, witness consciousness. We are a binary consciousness, and to the vehicle, we are not necessarily consequential. We just get a ride, and when the ride's over, that's it. Now, Ra would be quite dry, and is sardonic the right word, you guys? What would you think of as Ra? He can be sarcastic, he can be witty, he can be funny, but you know, his sense of humor was very black. And so here he'll say, the body doesn't care about you. Your vehicle doesn't care about you. Your brain doesn't care about you. That you that you think you are, it doesn't. It's living out a very, very deep, programmed, mechanical process that has a beginning, middle, and end. We know that when it comes to life, beginning, middles, and ends. You just happen to be a byproduct of it all, as in your imprinting for this life. It was given to you by the very nature of your relationship to this body that lives its one precious life. Actually, in this particular audio, he says that it's incredibly rare for a design to reincarnate, that they normally get recycled. Okay, but it is a possibility. So nothing more, nothing less. We're just a witness, passenger, left on the outside, not ever having gone into the body, not being allowed to enter the body. And when you think about that, it's quite an interesting dynamic. The movement through this lower part of the vehicle, the moment that the design and monopole are together, they're sitting there in gate 2. This is where the literal opening happens or takes place. And that hidden gate down here that we've talked about, in essence, at the other side of the root center, here's the 60, the 3 and the 60, and then this is the opening that happens. This moment that the design and the monopole are hitting each other, coming together, and then they go out, they leave the body. And there, in that moment, what we have is this opening all the way down through the center. That departure of the design and monopole, where do they go? They go back into the center of the earth. Journey to the center of the earth. The completion of the journey of our design crystal with our monopole is their return to the center of Mama Earth, our design crystal bundle. So what's interesting about the design crystal return is that it's extremely rare, because he was given knowledge of exceptions. However, it's extremely rare for a design crystal without the recycling process to happen to reincarnate, because the vast majority of design crystals only go through whatever their function is on this planet once, and then they're replaced by what we would consider to be an upgrade, a newer models. So this is how we evolve, how we've discovered this as a species, the best way for us to evolve with, the changes on the planet. So a graduated system of different experiences of consciousness in form, because all forms have a design crystal. Again, it's extremely rare for a design crystal to reincarnate, because they're very different in that sense from personality, because our personalities are designed to incarnate and reincarnate, where design crystals are designed to incarnate and leave and upgrade, so that you have this binary, these two things happening with these binary consciousness. And so in this process of the design crystal having dropped down to the throat, reuniting with the monopole in the G center, that biological death occurring, then the movement down through the 2, the 14, the 3, the 60. Now we have the clock starting. The moment that the vehicle and the monopole leave the body together, that is the moment we have the clock starting on our minimum 72 hours. It could be a little bit shorter, I have heard, but 72 is, we don't know when the pickup for the personality crystal is going to happen, but 72 will pretty much give you your bardo process as far as your time. Now, remember, it will probably not feel like time. It's a different kind of process, because you no longer have access to the full experience of what it's like to have your ashna be operated by the design crystal. So the biological body systems are not functioning. What Ross says is that if you're, he assumes, if you're really close to somebody, as in you have the auric to aura contact with them, that will work. So as an example, the ideal being here, as far as a hospice worker or somebody who is helping someone transition during their death, that would be a projector. And the projector only because their aura is focused on the G center, and they can only take in one being at a time. So if you're staying with somebody through the death cycle and they die, and you stay with them as much as you can during that 72-hour sequence, chances are, as a projector, you may sense when that moment of them getting picked up by their crystal bundle, you may be able to experience or sense when that moment actually takes place. But he's speculating. It seems to him, from a logical, mechanical perspective, that that would be possible, that somebody who's doing the death watch for you and holding space while you're going through your 72-hour bardo experience, that if you are a projector, that you would potentially be able to sense that. And the other thing is, as a generator at the bedside, you may be sensitive to this sensation simply in the fact that you're really an enveloping as far as your auric frequency field. So the fact that your aura is so large and incredibly porous, remember, if it's correct for you to be there, you have no filter that protects you other than your response and further being your own authority. If that includes emotionality, so be it. Where you may, because you're enveloping, let's say this woman is gone already, experienced brain death, the heart has stopped, that personality crystal riding around still just sitting there floating, but still attached to its vehicle. Because your aura is so large, you may be able to sense that moment where it's suddenly gone. Because obviously it's gone. It won't be lingering around the vehicle any longer. So it's going to be gone, and you may feel that too, according to Ra. So there has to be certain conditions to be met in order for you to get your full bardo experience. You know how kind of like if you studied rave psychology, you know that motivational frequency is something to behold as far as your awareness. It's kind of like the jewel at the center of the lotus, so to speak. It's an incredible thing to witness. For bardo, it's the same thing, as in it's amazing, according to Ra, and it was something that he was looking forward to. Now, the conditions to be met for that bardo experience to happen: one, the body is not to be moved within a certain degree, as in there's limited movement possible. That's why I decided to rename this course to Natural Death, because with, dramatic, accidental, decapitating kind of deaths and accidents, who knows? I don't know. But the most important thing is that the body stays above ground. So not to be dissected, molested. Oh, that's a disgusting thought. Anything to do with changing where it is when it naturally left its body, the place. Okay, the place. In other words, no autopsy performed. And that's the basic thing to deal with. As in, the criterion that's essential is that the body simply isn't touched. And some people, cultures, countries actually do hold vigil or hold space for these people, and others burn their dead. It's just a fact of life and what to do. That's why it may be a potential that somebody might take it upon themselves to actually contact a lawyer and see what can be done in your country. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to do that in every country, but I'm sleeping on it as far as what to do about my country, America here, for the 72 hours, where there's a lingering of the personality crystal. And for 72 hours, this is all about the electrical activity that is still happening within the brain system. The body organs have already shut down, but the brain itself still has certain areas of the brain in the deep gray areas that are reserved for death. Certain areas will retain their electrical activity much longer than other areas of the brain. And this is why the 72 hours, as far as what it's all about in terms of the possibilities of your personality crystal taking advantage of the remaining functioning activity of the brain within the brain itself. And this is why autopsies are not good for disrupting the body, as in they will disrupt the body. Anything that takes away from the resources that are there left inside of the brain that are necessary for the passenger to experience its bardo stages. And we will start to look over the bardo stages next week. There are obviously going to be exceptions or anomalies. Ra didn't know what happened to somebody who dies from the skull being opened. So you crack your skull and then brains spilled all over the pavement. He didn't know if the skull being crushed or any of those kinds of things, anything that allows the very quick decay of the brain system. We know it's like 80% water, right? Or something like that, maybe more. I can't remember. But that cracking open of the skull, which protects your brain, it limits the possibilities of your bardo. And we can all assume it's just fate, geometry, whatever it is, as in the body not being disturbed is out of our hands, isn't it, to some degree? If it's important enough for you to ensure that you've got your after death instructions to your family, then yeah, maybe there is something that you can do about it, so long as there isn't an accidental death. So taking advantage of the remaining activity that's there in the brain, it is quite strong or surprising when you're dealing with somebody who's technically, dead, as in no heartbeat. There is no activity in the organ systems, not like there is in the brain where we experience the bardo.